Hello, hello. Are we live? Can we hear me? All right. Who do we have here? Oh, I recognize a lot of these names here. This means this regular thing is beginning to become kind of an expected thing, which is good news. Everybody, good morning. Good morning. Hey, Pega, how are you doing? Um, all right. Well, as always, looking forward to the conversation today. I'm just going to open up with some unfortunate news. We spoke to our teams earlier this morning. It looks like there's just going to be another little bit of a delay with Berserk, and so I just want to clear the air. I want to get that right out the gate. Um, and this is I know it's something that we were really excited to talk about, and there are some things I want to talk about regarding Berserk today. But but yeah, I know we already kind of laid the foundation for this, and I hope you guys know in game dev across the board, delays like this are inevitable. I mean, I see that coming from having spent 5 years at Blizzard, which was the king of long game delays. I think their average game was like a 7 year process. And so for me, it doesn't ruffle my feathers so much. But Ness was telling me like, oh, the community is going to be about this. And I was like, all right, well, we'll talk about those. Looks like with the dev team was having some server issues, which are kind of important with the sort of games that we're dealing with. And it's also kind of a fundamental sort of thing. They're on that. They're focusing on that. We're hopefully going to get some fixes coming up shortly, and I'm applying whatever pressure I have on that to get that through. They know it's a very hardworking team, and I think some of you are aware of the challenges they've had adapting to the code and everything else that's there. So we've got some very exciting stuff going on. We'll see the endless fight between players and devs. Yeah, delays happen. So it's a server thing. The nice thing is the server thing is it's a hardware issue, and so that's the sort of thing that is at least easier to fix as far as okay. What we'll get going to make that so it's not going to be a problem moving forward. We're still absolutely focused on the elements of Berserk that we want to see moving forward. And yeah, delays happen. I'm glad you guys understand that. What I did want to talk about though, I always like to go in, even if I've been working on a game for a couple months, and say, okay, let's go in blind. Let's go in. I've actually got my brother Ethan is a big gamer as well, and I always like getting kind of his fresh eyes. So I had him pop in and play the game this week, and I just said, hey, I just want you to take some notes and think of some stuff that as you're going through and playing. And he popped in both in Berserk and in Vulcanverse. It was fascinating getting his take on things. And it's funny, he was in just asking some questions, and somebody said, "Hey, is this Rookbane? What's going on?" He's like, "Cameron, somebody thinks that I'm you." I'm like, "All right, well, it must be your kind of noob questioning." Yeah, that was Dreyfus. You knew, okay. Midnight Cats. Did you? Anyway, he said the community was super helpful. Was very responsive to showing him around. And honestly, I think as great a game as we can make, nothing will match the community here. It really is a great crew that kind of walked him through. Now Ethan is a big World of Warcraft jerks actually. He's a big World of Warcraft player. In fact, he does a stand-up comedy show in World of Warcraft on Friday nights. And so I've very much had him go in with an eye towards could this be the sort of place where you could have a community thing like that, a stand-up kind of a comedy sports whose line is it anyway sort of a thing. And he's got lots of notes I'm still going over right now that I want to share with you. Um, but he had a great time. And he got in and played Berserk as well. He's big into Magic. He's big into Hearthstone. Um, and one of the things that he brought up, I actually brought it up to our team today, and I figured this might be an interesting thing to talk about. If you get into Berserk and you go to play some of the AI battles, you play against like it's like Dave Bot and Mike Bot. And he was like, Cameron, why are they called bots? Like, we get where you're playing that in AI. Why aren't they named after like the gods and the demigods? Why couldn't you play against Athena and Hercules and have their decks be themed around the domain and the powers of those gods? And I thought that was a really good idea. Ness really jumped on the idea as well. It actually kind of like sparked some excitement there. And what I love too is it actually folds into the focus that I'd like to put in on the Fatui, like I mentioned. And I'm like, that takes it away from this like weird side table of like play against AI to more of a, oh, this now becomes practice tutorial and a way of getting to know the universe and getting to know those gods. If we, Ness was talking about the idea of having a ramping up of difficulty as you play against these different gods as well. Right now you get in, and if you play through the tutorial, you go a couple rounds, then it says, okay, do you want to pop out to the lobby now? Like, you get the game. Let's go to the lobby and talk about creating decks. And that was another thought of Ethan's as well. He was like, I think you should just let me stay in and play this game, because when it gives me this option, it made me worry like, oh, am I supposed to get out of this? Like, I think you really need to hold somebody's hand when they're a first time player, and kind of walk them through a full game. Let's give them a full game, give them an easy win, and so they can feel a little bit of that victory match right there. So anyway, let's see what you guys, all matches. Yeah, the matches do need an overhaul. An interactive tutorial, Peg. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like the idea, the concept that I love about Berserk is this is the game that the gods themselves play. We've talked about, I think last week we talked about walking into a tavern in Vulcanverse and seeing some of the gods like gathered around the hearth, gathered around a table, slapping down cards. I think the idea that this is how they entertain themselves really gets, and I think will fold into kind of the sort of the more traditional art style and everything else that's in those cards. So we're actually looking at that right now. Ness says gods with unique traits and abilities. Some are a real test. Others may be drunk while playing. Oh yeah, like imagine playing against Dionysus, and he's absolutely hammered, and so his might be just a chaotic mismatch of cards. I love the idea of the meta effects as well, of things actually happening on the table. Like he'll spill a little like mug of beer that'll go across the table. We play against, if you're gonna play against Vulcan, there's sparks flying when he puts down his cards, or little embers coming up. If we get Zeus or Poseidon, his cards are soggy and splashing water. I really like having some flavor to that. And then those effects, so that they're not wasted, are actually cool things that you can earn through achievements in the game, so that you can eventually have this hand that's having those effects. So let's see. Pegarex says, I suggested introducing a tutorial based on the ability and present the cards associated with it. Have small quests with few moves, scoring. And Lumpy says, I like the idea that the gods play this game for real, with real creatures summoned. The mortals play the game with cards instead. Actually, Lumpy, that's cool. Like in my mind, they were playing it as a card game in the tavern. But like what you're talking about is like maybe there's an arena somewhere, and it's more like a like how they show live action Pokemon, in the cartoon, and they're actually calling down, and there's a bolt of lightning, and your creatures or your monsters or your forces appear right there. That could actually absolutely be really cool. Like kind of a more, again, I like this idea of I like pushing players to spend more time in the Vulcanverse. That we really want to keep people inside there. And if there's an arena where you can go and you can sit and watch these things go on, that might be, I mean, the amount of work required to have characters sitting around a table in a cavern versus a giant arena with lightning bolts and monsters coming out. There's a degree of work that'll go into those two things. So why don't we start with them at the pub, and we'll set the goal to have the monster arena there. Sort of thing. Here's the funny thing, like we already have a lot of things in place already that I don't think it's that latter possibility is so far fetched. We're already talking about doing some arena based games. We've already got some. I'm already thinking of several architectural assets that we could use for that. But it's a little bit outside the realm. What I want to do first and foremost, of course, is do some fixes to the game itself. I want to make the tutorial. I want the entry to make sense. I also want to make it clear that was something that Ethan, is, as a fairly newcomer to the Web3 universe, he said it was unclear at what point did you have to buy in to be able to make something back, to be able to find NFTs and everything else like that. I'm like, yeah, a lot of that we're still popping the player out onto their web browser to answer a lot of these questions, especially in the Vulcanverse. And I think all of this should be absolutely clear from inside the game, and it should be part of the story. And so that's what we're aiming for. Scory says, what about you start in Vulcan City and portals with separate games instead of having a launcher lobby style? Yeah, Scory, that's kind of what we're thinking about. And we're looking at incorporating more of these external games. I remember my very first exposure to Vulcan Forged. You pull up the Vulcan launcher, and there is just this array of games, which is cool, but there's no rhyme or reason. I'm like, where do I begin? Where do I start? And so that's why I'm trying to bring that focus into the Vulcanverse. So there you create your avatar, you create your physical manifestation, and that's really what will kind of carry you through. And I want it to be part of a story where you choose to go. And so C Lumpy says, which game will see your NFT Fatui changes first? When do you expect the first roll? So it really depends on how. The answer is not an easy one because we're having those server issues with Berserk. We're doing some big changes with, I think, for instance, Tower Defense is just a simpler game. And we've got some Fatui changes happening there. So those might come sooner, even though we're working like I just spent this past week working with our Vulcanverse team on the Fatui stuff. We're doing an entire revamp on the character creation. We're doing an intro cinematic for this that I've written up. You might be surprised by some of the voices that you hear in this. And I really, it's funny, the microscopic focus that you need to give on every little step to make a Fatui work. Coming from, I remember having the focus. I was at Scopely. I don't know if you guys know of Scopely. It's a mobile studio out of Culver City. And they had made a shift from doing like a dice game, and that had done really well. Some others to starting to work with Universal Pictures and Warner Brothers. And I mentioned this a little bit in my history, but they wanted to say, how do we get a big game like Star Trek or like a Looney Tunes game, and how do we make sure we grab the player within the first? It wasn't even the first minute. It wasn't even the first 30 seconds. It was how are the first 15 seconds going to absolutely grab the player and make them want to focus on that. And so we're trying to bring that kind of microscopic focus into Vulcanverse. I want, from the minute you turn that game on, you have a host. We've got the Cadmius to walk us through. And he's talking about that you've been chosen by the gods to be an avatar, and it helps because he's also a demigod, and so he's kind of like, this is why I was chosen. and he'll bring you through the character creation screen and then straight into the beginning level, because that was another worry. In any MMORPG, like you think of when you step into a first game in WoW, you're right there, and there's a character right in front of you with a giant yellow question mark over their head, so you know exactly where to go. And I know to us seasoned veterans, that sounds really basic, but we want to open the gates. We want to get as many people through those gates as we can, so that's going to be the focus. All right, let's read through what we've got here. Let's see. Cards game NFT should be shown as locked in game, and then let them know how to unlock. That's actually a great idea, Pegarex. Which game will see your Fatui change first? Oh, you already asked that. Will VV characters creation be permanent? Right now, we can change our look every time we enter the game. I'd love to force some decisions. Okay, Lumpy, I really like that idea. Like, I think there should be some element of permanence. Here's the real trick. In a lot of games, you get in and you choose a race and you choose a class, and those are the elements that are more, you kind of have an idea like these are more permanent. And so if you're choosing to be a rogue, for instance, you might choose a more agile, slender, hard to see, looking sort of character. And so you kind of know going in like what those types, what those races are going to bring. If you're going to come in as an orc, for instance, you want to big and scary and intimidating. In our game, because that's not so clear, and because we don't have the distinction of race and class just yet, I don't want the players to feel paralyzed by, I don't know how much it'll mean if I choose broader shoulders versus narrow shoulders, sort of thing. And so it's something we're trying to make clear in that introduction. I like the idea of when you come in, the character, that main body form that you created is permanent, but you can add things like tattoos. Excuse me. You can add tattoos. We're looking at doing cool skin modifications, like being blessed by Vulcan. What if you could have like cracky, like magma, running through the skin? Those things I think should be vanity things you can add and subtract. I know in WoW they've got like you can go to the barber and switch those things around. Obviously, of course, we'll have different armor and weapons and clothing like that as well. So it'll be about finding that balance. But maybe that's something we can put in the creative as a poll of what do we want on that permanence? Because I agree, there should be something of, this is me, this is what I look like in the game, and then it'll mean that people can recognize you when they get into play. So we'll all know, hey, that right there's Lumpyland right there, because Lumpyland has that avatar. So your concept of creating a character called God sounds great, but customization reality is key. Assume no class system will be implemented. Yeah, no class yet. I kind of want to push for that. I'll be honest. Like that is down the line. That's going to come with other things. The real trick in game dev on a game that's out on a live game like this is, imagine trying to make additions to a car while it's driving. And so we don't want to add something that's going to ruin that or make people who have already been invested so much feel like they've got to start over again. But I think it would make a lot of sense to have that sort of thing. And maybe there won't be as fundamental changes. Like if you choose to be in a game, you choose to be a barbarian versus a rogue, there's some vital changes that are going to affect what you wear, what you're geared with, and how you play. Ours might be a little bit more like professions than classes, so that anybody can excel in them or not. But we'll see. Thank you for the blessing there. All right, what is your approach idea about NFTs and their marketing strategies? So I've worked with a bunch of Web3 companies. As far as the economy of games and on Web3, obviously that's not what you hire me to be an expert in. I come in bringing game design philosophy and creative philosophy, but I'm very, very much familiar with the NFTs. The really, my biggest philosophy that I want to champion in Web3 is to pull away the macro focus that's on NFTs all the time, and make it clear that like NFTs are one of many assets and cool elements that you have in a company like this, And I think most of the studios I've been with have put such a hyper focus on the NFTs that the games have suffered, if that makes sense. The games have lacked the polish and the fun and those elements that you really need. And I'm a big believer that if you make a great game, you'll do better with the NFTs. You'll sell more NFTs because people want to use them in the game. So that's kind of my focus. I hope that sounds like an answer, not an evasion, but that's really my philosophy. All right, Kevin says, my girlfriend wants to know if you can play as a woman and why your X account only says fanboys in other language. Is it for men only? No, Kevin, like that's actually, I love that she rated that. I've not been aware of that. I appreciate you bringing that up. We absolutely need to look at this. This is 100% supposed to be a game for everybody. And yeah, I really appreciate that coming up. I was unaware that we had, kind of some sexist language there. So appreciate you raising that. I'll make that a top priority. And I mean, there's so many reasons for that, apart from, just making it a game for everybody to play. I mean, why would we want to disenfranchise 50% of our potential player base? And the women in Greek Roman mythology are just as interesting, powerful, devious, and heroic as the men are. I mean, you will hear as many stories about Athena as you will about Hercules. So thank you for bringing that up. We'll make some focus on that for sure. And Lumpy says, vanity items just like real life. You want to add a tattoo on face, but you can't take it off. Yeah, we're going to play with that. Obviously, that's going to need to be something we'll need the community to be a part of. Like I said, in some games, you've got a barber, you've got stuff that you can do temporarily. I think I like the idea of earning those things, like a certain tattoo, a certain mark, a certain, I would love to do like animated flame tattoos. Like we're in a magical land of the gods. Like your tattoos do not have to be static ink, right? I'd like those to be earned through achievements. Earlier we had talked about achievements, and it's kind of lame right now. You're just getting 1 gold for doing these things. I think that is a better way of doing vanity. Sure, you can sell them. Fortnite, makes bank by selling that stuff. But I like being able to show off what I've done as a mark on my skin, as an element like that. So, all right. All right. So, oh yeah, more about. Sorry, it's scrolled up here. Okay, classes, something you can level up, possibly. Again, classes are tricky because they can be really deeply, fundamentally transformative to a game. And so right now we're playing with this idea of professions, of just something you can excel in. That wouldn't be as transformative, but absolutely I can see us doing a level up skill tree thing with that. All right. More about the fair language, which I absolutely agree. Fanboys, fangirls, how just fans? I would rather we just not make it something that's focused on stuff that's outside of the gaming fascination anyway, right? She forgives us now. I appreciate that. Scory says, do you think we overdid it with the NFTs, making a Potador an NFT? The technology is great, but having everything NFT makes them not as special. That's again, I'm not going to comment too much on what was done before I got here, just because there's always history and stories, and Vulcan Forge is an incredibly nuanced and complex group, because they're different teams from different parts of the world working on this stuff, and it's amazing that all the games they've been able to put together thus far. What I'm just trying to do is bring some focus, if that makes sense. Ness says ancient Greco-Roman tattoo removal. I mean, I imagine lightning bolts would be involved somehow there. Yeah, beat a certain dungeon, get the right to wear a tattoo. Achievements mean a lot. So thoughts on allegiances in games, quadrants allegiances. So So that I think is a really fun way to bring nuance into a game like this. In other games they'll call it building rep. Did you build rep with this faction versus this faction? And that reputation is measured by points that are got. They're apart from experience points. They're apart from gold as well. And so I love when a game asks you to make the calculation of the time spent for rep or gold or experience. Is it going to be worth the reward on the end? And that's the way you can really build a game that caters towards every type of player. So if you've got min-maxer power players, well, you want to rep with, Zeus over here. But if you want the coolest, most badass gear and vanity items, well, you better rep with Neptune. The under the sea forges are killer right there, right? Or if you want, so I like playing with different groups that allow you to show off why you play and what you like to play. Or if you're a balanced player, you kind of want to get equal rep with all those. That's kind of what I want to play with there. So Channel Bo says, Vulcan looking at acquiring artists. Frazetta is such an iconic part. I don't see this as an economic leverage so much as sharing our roots as a community. Listen, I was before I became the creative director, I was an animator. Before that, I was an illustrator. So I love Frazetta. And I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing artists. Like when I was at Blizzard, we had Braum. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the work of Braum. He did a lot of the fundamental art from the Dark Sun stuff with D&D. He did some killer art for us on Diablo. Some of the artists literally at Blizzard are just incredible artists as well. And I love. I'm kind of hot and cold about a lot of the art that we've got for Vulcan Forge, just because some of it doesn't really seem to match up. And so I love the stuff we've got on our website. We've got some killer stuff right there. I want to try and bring the rest of our art up to that level. And now, I mean, Frazetta bringing in some, some of the massive names, and I would love to do that. That obviously comes at a price, but yeah, I mean, Channel of Woe, you spoke deeply to my soul there, because I think that is a big part of fantasy games, is the art that just pops your retinas out of your eyeballs, Okay, so Oz says, you thought about how to pull in more traditional gamers, since crypto gamers traditionally are only interested in making money. Yeah, Oz, that has been my siren call. That's one of the reasons why I do Web3 games, is because I think the only thing keeping Web3 apart from traditional games has been the lack of focus on making really quality games. And it's I see a lot of these studios trying to reinvent the wheel, and I'm like, listen, there are experts that know how to make these great games. You don't have to start from scratch. That's one of the reasons I'm here, is to say, what can we do with the games that exist to put them up to a quality where I would love for a gamer out there to say, oh, let's see, I could play Hearthstone, I could play Magic, or oh, this Berserk game looks really cool. And if we can get them to want to play this game without caring that they can make money or find NFTs off of that, and then on top of that, like, oh, of course this game's better because it's as good and as fun and has that ability. That for me would be the the holy grail, or the lion's mane. What's a good appropriate Greek myth thing for that? But yeah. All right. Let's see. Kevin says, you got in some point, bring cohesion, clarity, gameplay. Thank you, Kevin. Curious, it will make people have significant advantage they can outspend. Yeah, that is always the question. And I, coming from traditional gaming, I don't like play to win. I think I think the more money you put in should be for if you want more vanity stuff that's cool, maybe bigger properties, maybe but I know it's a little bit of a different calculus, obviously, with Web3. So I think that there should be an element of skill based, there should be an element of time based, and then money that's put in should just be able to enhance the experience. You know, that is, I know, very much at the core of what Web3 is. So that might be a little more of a controversial thing to say over across on this side of the fence. And you guys, we're getting to the end of our little session here. Let me see if there are any other questions I can get real quick. Most games are play to win, not really something for a VF sub. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Well, Zodiac constellations or similar stuff get into the games. They're not only gods and titans to play with. That's a great idea. I think there's a lot of fun things. One of the great things about rooting our game in this Greco-Roman mythology is we have literally centuries of like lore and stuff to play with, and the way it's woven into spirituality and faith and the stars, and you know, the fact that our our most futuristic cool tech is exploring the stars and planets that are named after these ancient gods and goddesses. Like, I just love the cool circularity of that. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to bring that around, you guys. Again, apologies we didn't get into the updates on Berserk. We're going to be pushing on that. Hopefully next week I'll have more to say on that. But hey, you know, for me, the big point of these AMAs is just digging into what's cool about what we're doing and making sure that you folks feel like you've got transparency into what's happening here. So thank you, everybody, for being a part of what we've been doing here. And again, I'm over on the Cameron's Canyon on Discord if you want to continue any of those discussions. Hope they'll have a great Wednesday.